please take care of it?" Late at night, when people had settled into sleep, we heard voices outside, and my husband and I, curious, went out. There in our garage was a small baby. I was startled and immediately tried to contact the police, but my husband stopped me, saying, "Absolutely do not call the police. But we can't just leave the baby like this." "Okay, I'll go. But you must not breathe a word about this." My husband, sweating despite the chilly temperature. If only I had realized everything at that moment, could we have prevented the catastrophe that would follow? I'm Taylor, 31 years old. That day I was at the shopping mall with my husband, James. We had just purchased a spring dress that my husband had picked out, and we were leaving the store. Suddenly, a small child running without looking ahead collided with me. "Whoa. Sorry." Impressed by the child's polite apology, I smiled gently. "It's okay, just be careful and don't run around like that." "Okay." The child cheerfully replied, and perhaps because they were told not to run, walked quickly back to their parents, a sight that was quite endearing. "A child, huh? So nice," I murmured with a heavy heart. "Sorry, it's because I had a miscarriage." We had lost our conceived child at 2 months of pregnancy before. The grief at that time was immense, and it hadn't healed even after a year had passed. Since then, my husband and I had been unable to conceive. My husband reassured me, "Take it easy, it'll be okay," but as I grew older, the risk of childbirth also increased. I always struggled to respond properly to my encouraging husband. Then, one day when I was feeling down, my friend Lily approached me. "Taylor." Turning around, she stood there, stroking her large pregnant belly, with a radiant smile. I had met Lily about a year ago when she came to the cooking class I attend. She was very beautiful and cheerful, and we quickly became close, visiting each other's homes frequently. Lily's pink hair danced elegantly like cherry blossom petals in spring, accentuating her personality. Her enjoyment of her unique style, unconstrained by norms, gave me strength. "The baby is coming soon. Hang in there." "Thank you." When I learned of her pregnancy, I didn't feel any jealousy. Instead, I felt as if it were happening to me, and I shared in her joy. With a kind husband and wonderful friends like her, I was living a happy life. I never imagined it would be shattered in such a way. On a warm spring day, Lily safely gave birth and was discharged from the hospital. I wanted to celebrate, but I couldn't ask her to go out in her postpartum condition. I suggested celebrating at Lily's house, but she said, "Mine's a mess. Why don't we do it at your place?" So we decided to have a meal at my house. It was time to show off my cooking skills honed in cooking class, so I diligently prepared many celebratory dishes. But that's when the tragedy occurred. What's this? Terrible. What Lily said was about to taste my best dish, beef stew. Although we were having a pleasant conversation, I suddenly felt the atmosphere freeze. Was it bad? I did taste it, though. However, Lily ignored my words, stood up abruptly, and began to throw the food into the trash can. "I can't believe we go to the same cooking class, and you serve this to your husband every day. What are you doing? This is too much." Even though I criticized her, her hands didn't stop. It felt like not only were my celebratory feelings being thrown away, but I also found myself in tears. I had checked the taste multiple times, so it shouldn't have been bad. Moreover, I had used the exact same recipe that my husband usually praises as delicious. James, please say something to Lily. I asked my husband for help, but he didn't even seem to reprimand her. Instead, he started to get angry, saying, "You can't serve bad food to guests." What had happened between the two of them, I couldn't understand. That's enough. I'm leaving. As she said that and was about to leave the room, my husband unexpectedly rushed to her. "Hey Lily, I'll give you a ride." Despite her despicable behavior, her postpartum body. Was I the one with the narrow heart for not being considerate? The sound of the door closing echoed in the quiet space. In my sorrow and anger, I scooped up a spoonful of the beef stew remaining in the pot. It's not bad, so why did she? No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't find an answer. And my husband, who could drive her home in about 30 minutes by car, hadn't returned even after an hour. What was happening between the three of us? At that moment, I had no idea. From that day on, things between my husband and me became tense. My husband started coming home late every night, claiming it was for work drinks, and our conversations as a couple decreased. The opportunity for him to taste my home-cooked meals disappeared. I had originally started attending cooking classes to enjoy meals with my husband, but I no longer saw the point. Where had my once kind husband gone? It was on the day we had dinner together for the first time in a while. We couldn't enjoy our meal with laughter like we used to, and there was tension in the air at the dining table. Occasionally our gazes met and then quickly averted. In that awkward atmosphere, my husband suddenly spoke up. "Isn't it because of you that we had a miscarriage and can't get pregnant afterwards?" I was shocked by his words, unable to close my mouth. "I never expected you to say something like that. Isn't this an issue for both of us?" Without further ado, my husband and I began to argue, and finally, those words came out of his mouth. "We got married because we wanted children, and if we can't have them, I'm divorcing you." I felt a pain in my chest at my husband's words. Never did I expect to be threatened with divorce. However, since we hadn't undergone any tests, I couldn't say anything back, fearing that if it really was my fault, what would I do? That night, I lay in bed, troubled in the darkness. Why does he suddenly want a divorce now? Even in the middle of the night, unable to sleep, I kept tossing and turning, and then I heard a suspicious noise from outside. As I got out of bed and tried to leave the bedroom, my husband came to me rubbing his sleepy eyes, asking, "What's that noise?" Together, we searched for the source of the noise and we found out it was coming from the garage. As we nervously went outside and listened, we heard the cries of a baby coming from the darkness. Hastily rushing towards the source of the sound, we found a small baby crying alone. I lifted the child, whose body was still warm, and fortunately it seemed that not much time had passed since it was abandoned. Who could do such a terrible thing? As I tried to bring the child into the house, I noticed a letter lying on the ground. "Please take care of this child." Those were the words neatly written on it. I tried to call 911, but my husband hurriedly stopped me. "Don't you dare call the police," he said, leaving me bewildered. But I couldn't just leave it at that, so after discussing with my husband, he agreed to take the baby directly to the police. It's a relief to be able to hold a baby, even after having a miscarriage. When we left the house, my husband's words left a deep wound in my heart. In the early hours of the morning, I heard from my husband, who had returned home, that he had safely handed the baby over to the police, which relieved me for the time being. However, despite this incident being unresolved, the fact that I was being handed a divorce was undeniable. Is divorce the only option because I'm being blamed for everything? As I picked up the clothes in the laundry basket, something caught my eye stuck to my husband's shirt. Huh? This hair. At that moment, it felt like all the pieces of the puzzle had finally come together. I can't let this continue like this. Filled with anger, I resolved to motivate myself and take action. Under the warm midday sun, I sat on a bench in the park, pondering what to do next. It's probably impossible to repair the relationship with my husband. Thinking so, tears naturally flowed. Oh dear, what's wrong, young lady? It's embarrassing to cry outside like this. As I thought that, an elderly woman sitting on the next bench spoke to me. At first I was cautious of the sudden encounter, but her smile was warm. Since she's a stranger, maybe there are things I can talk to her about. With that in mind, I opened up to her about my worries and struggles. The woman, who introduced herself as Marie, listened attentively to my story from a complete stranger, occasionally comforting and encouraging me. Surrounded by her gentle atmosphere, my heart gradually felt lighter. You've been through a lot, but life has various trials. I'm sure you can overcome them. Her words seemed to melt into my dry heart. Overflowing with kindness from a complete stranger, tears streamed down uncontrollably. Despite talking to Marie about various things, I hadn't found a way to discipline my husband. Then she advised, it's best to gather evidence at the scene. And from there, the two of us devised a plan. On that day, a week later, I lied to my husband that I was going out. How unusual. I'll be going out later too. With a somewhat cheerful demeanor, my husband saw me off to the front door. I was trying to stay calm, but my heart was racing and my hands were sweating profusely. The night before, I did a certain trick with my husband's holiday bag. I hope it's nothing, but I'm prepared if it does happen. I told myself this and headed for my destination. An hour later, I was in an old-fashioned coffee shop. The restaurant was filled with a warm atmosphere and happy conversation, while I sat with Marie with a serious look on my face. As I thought, he's going to Lily's place. After my husband saw me off, I tracked his whereabouts using the GPS I had put in his bag, and just 10 minutes after I left home, my husband also went out and headed to the expected location. But when Marie heard my words, she seemed restless for some reason. What's the matter? Taylor, listen. Marie continued hesitantly, but what she said next was a shock to me. I think that girl, Lily, is my daughter. What? My voice trembled with surprise and confusion. Marie's voice carried a sense of sadness as she said, "It seems so." Even though we didn't understand why Lily would cheat with my husband, it was unfortunate but inevitable that she chose this path for us both. However, even knowing that Lily and Marie were mother and daughter, I wasn't about to abandon our plan. Marie, I can't forgive Lily or my husband. I understand. I also wish for both of them to suffer. Will you, as Lily's mother, help me with that? I looked Marie straight in the eye. Marie seemed to ponder for a moment, then nodded with determination. Although she's my daughter, she's an adult now. She'll have to take responsibility for her actions. Taylor, I'll do whatever I can to help. Thank you. I felt humbled by Marie's strength and firmness. She gently squeezed my hand and smiled, saying, "Let's do our best together." With her support, I was convinced I could face any challenge. From there, we headed to Lily's house and eventually arrived at an apartment located beyond the shopping district. My husband has been here several times. Imagining my husband and Lily getting along made me feel nauseous. But Marie kept encouraging me. As we climbed the stairs and stood in front of the door, my heart raced faster. I crouched down quietly and listened to the bug I had planted in my husband's bag. At first, I could hear casual conversation and laughter between Lily and my husband. But gradually, their conversation became more serious, and the truth I had feared finally came to light. "When are you going to divorce?" Lily strongly demanded of my husband. "Why do you think I did that? You're dad now." I had suspected it, but the baby in that garage belonged to Lily. Her actions, the ruined celebration party, it was all part of a scheme to force my husband and me to divorce. Using a baby to fulfill her own desires. Unforgivable. From the cries of the baby heard behind their conversation, it seemed that the child had been returned to Lily. When my husband insisted on taking her to the police, it wasn't to protect her, but to take her back to Lily's house. From the bug, I could hear my husband's affectionate voice towards Lily. He whispered love to her and even expressed regret for marrying me. Considering the timing of her pregnancy and childbirth, he must have been cheating for about a year. Thinking about it made me furious and unable to stop the tears. I couldn't bear to stay there any longer and tried to leave the house. But Marie firmly grabbed my hand. "Taylor, wait. Is it okay to leave things as they are?" Her straight gaze made me realize. That's right, I've come this far to shock my husband. Encouraged by Marie, I knocked loudly on the door. Lily opened the door with a carefree tone, but her eyes widened like saucers when she saw me. Taylor, what's wrong?" Suppressing intense anger and sadness, I calmly confronted her. "Lily, you're hiding something from me, aren't you? What are you doing with my husband?" "Taylor, it's not what you think." My husband, who came out in a hurry, tried to deny it, but his attitude only made me more irritated. "What is all about?" I asked my husband to bring his bag, then pulled out a voice recorder from it and thrust it toward them. "It's all recorded on this." Sweat dripped from my husband's forehead as he cautiously began to speak. "How did you find out about the affair with Lily?" "There was a hair stuck to your shirt. A pretty pink one." "Darn it." My husband panicked and held his head in his hands, devoid of any affection. Contrary to his pitiful state, Lily showed a relaxed expression for some reason. "Don't you think you're partly to blame too? Being cheated on means you've lost as a woman." "Huh. What are you talking about?" "Because if you can't even get pregnant, you're useless as a wife, aren't you?" Lily sniffed disdainfully. At that moment, Marie appeared behind me and sharply raised her voice. "Lily, what are you doing?" "Huh? Mom." Lily seemed completely caught off guard by the unexpected presence of her mother, her confidence from earlier disappearing as she began to fidget nervously. Empowered by Marie's arrival, I confronted her. "Lily, why did you do this?" "HMP, what does it matter? Besides, I only joined the cooking class to get close to you. I'm your husband's ex-girlfriend. We've been seeing each other even after you got married." I was shocked by this revelation. I had assumed that the affair happened after Lily and I met. To learn that even our brief friendship was a lie, and that my husband had been betraying me for so long filled me with sadness. Seeing my devastated state, Marie glared at Lily. "Do you think you can get away with this? I'm cutting ties with you as my daughter." What? But what about my allowance? It seemed Lily had been living off her parents' support. That's off the table. And I'll make sure your father knows too for not even telling him about the child. In a stark contrast to earlier, Lily began to panic. "I'm sorry, Mom. Please don't tell Dad. You should be apologizing to Taylor, not me, you foolish daughter." With a stern rebuke, Lily burst into tears. After sending a sympathetic glance her way, I turned to my husband. He had been cheating with his ex-girlfriend since the beginning of our marriage, trying to make me out to be the bad guy and divorce me. "You and I are getting a divorce. I'll be asking for $30,000 in compensation." "Don't be ridiculous. I've told you countless times it's your infertility that's the problem. I had a miscarriage a year ago. You were cheating long before that, weren't you?" Seeing my calm response, my husband's face turned red, and he began to tremble. However, perhaps remembering that the evidence was on the voice recorder, he resigned himself, and now, crying, clung to my feet. "I'm sorry, Taylor. Please forgive me. I don't have that kind of money. Please." Although he prostrated himself, begging for forgiveness, my heart remained unmoved. I kicked him away, refusing to let him cling to me any longer, and left the scene with Marie. Afterward, I divorced my husband and demanded $30,000 from him and $15,000 from Lily in compensation. He ended up losing his job due to his repeated mistakes at work caused by the divorce. With no income, he took out loans to pay the compensation, and now he's struggling to repay them, working manual labor from morning till night. It seems that Lily was caught on a neighborhood surveillance camera abandoning the baby in the garage, and she lost custody. The child was taken in by Marie's family. With no one to rely on, she fell into the streets at night. Meanwhile, I invited Marie to join a cooking class, and we enjoy cooking together. Next week we're planning to make borscht tea, and I'm looking forward to it.